have picked up the largest managed office space globally anywhere in the world.
About 75% of India's commercial real estate today is unorganized. Why do you have to manage your own office? We can manage your office space as a service better than you.
The IPO journey, most are not able to make it, and there are those few who are, and you are definitely one of them.
Only mantra to success is trying one more time.
Welcome to the second edition of KPMG in India's podcast series for startups, the Speakeasy version 2.0, where we indulge in frank and honest conversations with some of the startup founders who've made it big in their own way. This is a forum where the brand builders, the rule breakers, and the culture shapers spill the real tea, or coffee in this instance. This year, we are planning to go deeper, louder, and sharper. I'm your host for today, Gaurav Vohra, partner with CFO Advisory Practice and leading the Emerging Giants program for the firm. Today we have Harsh Binani with us, who's the co-founder of a company which is now defining how India works. Yes, we're talking about Smartworks. Congratulations again on a great listing and a very smooth listing. Harsh's journey actually spans India, US, back to India. He had an amazing consulting career, if I understand best. He did his honors in economics from SRCC, went on to do an MBA from Kellogg School of Management in the US, went on to work with McKinsey. I'm not sure at which point of time the entrepreneurial bug bit him. And maybe that's the right place to start, Harsh, with your permission. So if you could just elaborate a bit on what brought you back from consulting to entrepreneurship.
No, firstly, thank you, Gaurav, for having me here. Very excited to share our journey today. Very interesting times, I would say, the last decade for India. Right after SRCC, I got a phenomenal opportunity to work with McKinsey and Company in their Chicago office. The 5 foundational years I had in corporate America was eye-opening as a very young lad right out of India, getting exposure to corporate scale, a lot of structure. And somewhere down the line, while pursuing business school, the realization dawned on me that belonging to an entrepreneurial family in India, the question was really not about why, but really when would I actually move back to India and do something of my own. And somewhere through this entire journey in US, which truly I would say you were living the American dream, which was very safe, structured, the realization was, am I getting too comfortable? And perhaps that entire realization dawned on me and gave me that urge to move back. And again, remember 2015, 2016 was interesting times for the Indian economy as well, because suddenly you could start to see a lot of startups emerge in India. You could see a lot of global capital. So there was a lot of buzz and excitement. And somewhere you could keep procrastinating and keep delaying and make that tomorrow, till one fine day you realize that tomorrow is actually today. And I remember distinctly growing up, my grandfather used to tell me the story of Abhimanyu, who often had mastered the art of entering the Chakravyuh. But the story also teaches you what he did not learn, which was how to make that exit. So that childhood story did leave a deep impression upon me that perhaps now is the time to exit the safety and transform a chaotic opportunity in India into something very massive. And perhaps here is a time where you could really accelerate the entrepreneurial journey by taking advantage of the timing in India. And that's just how the plunge happened. So I would say it's a combination of realization of being very comfortable and at the same time a phenomenal business opportunity which we saw through the lens of Smartworks. US was taking off meaningfully at that point of time because co-working was a very popular idea. However, you knew deep down that the solution in India would not be a co-working solution. It would need to be something which can really Indianize the idea And that's how the humble journey started.
Oh, superb. Not too humble, I must say. You shouldn't be, because not many startups I've seen go public in the time span that you have. And I know I've already congratulated you, but given that I come from that background, I know how difficult it is. And so just to share with everyone, I think Smartworks was founded in 2015-16 timeframe, and we got listed within the first 10 years of our finding it. And that's a commendable achievement, and must congratulate you and your team once again on doing that. Also, why Smartworks? That's something which has intrigued me, because we already had quite a few co-working spaces which existed even as early as 2016-17. People had started dabbling in it. So, and there were a lot of ideas, as you're saying. So from ideation to formation to operationalization, finally the exit, the other exit, which happened in the market. What took you to Smartworks and not any other idea? Because there was a lot happening at that time, right?
Look, the fundamental truth is there is no right or wrong answer. Sometimes you have to seize an opportunity and continue the pivot and the entire journey of perseverance, grit that it requires you to demonstrate throughout this journey. Eventually, more doors and opportunities open if you continue in that path. And Smartworks has been quite a remarkable journey in the last less than 9 years, I would say, which includes 2 to 3 years of our pivot. And let's not forget, there were 2.5 massive years of COVID, where survival was a big question. And then coming out of it very strong, scaling up, and then taking the company public has been quite a roller coaster journey. And early on, I was quite inspired by Nitish, who started Smartworks. I came on board about 6 months after he started. And he's also spent a lot of his foundational time in US. And somewhere we clicked instantly. And I remember distinctly his family as well. He's my wife's brother. And during courtship, when we got talking and he spoke about what he's building in India, I was quite inspired by the energy and just how big the opportunity could be. And somewhere deep down, I remember in our early days of Smartworks, we always had conviction that this idea can actually become quite big. And both of us were fairly young, coming with that exuberance that we better do something big or go home. And quite frankly, if you try to clone an idea from overseas and try to find success in India, that formula doesn't work. And co-working happened to be one such global idea, which worked very well at a global scale, largely because the developed countries had developed or structured institutional real estate available on the supply side. And similarly, on the demand side as well, you had large institutions. So somewhere institution meeting institution made the market fairly transparent. And that's where small startups and medium-sized organizations who could not get access to great space found the idea of co-working very compelling. That's how the origin of the idea was. But somewhere, whenever we used to visit the Google Meta campuses, we always used to go out of those campuses feeling, aha, this is a Disneyland for adults. There's a gym, there's a creche, there's a lot of blending of technology and hospitality. And you almost felt compelled to think that office does not have to be very drab. And remember the days in India where mass offices are not beyond 4 walls and a desk. And you somewhere felt that if you have to eventually think about the future of India, where you're looking at making the lives of everyone happy and productive on a daily basis, you have to create these aspirational amenities. So the journey that followed right after the first 2 years of co-working, which is what you rightly pointed out, because there were a lot of other players, there was competition mushrooming, we had to go back to the whiteboard and challenge ourselves that what is the fundamental truth in India that are we trying to solve? And is this problem really big? And somewhere medium-sized organizations in India are an important constituent of the economy, but they actually occupy very little office space. So somewhere if you have to make a large impact, you have to think outside the box. And the unique insight that drew upon us was the fact that the Indian market is structured very differently. About 75% of India's commercial real estate today is unorganized. And when I say unorganized, in very simple terms, it means non-institutional, from small landlords, one-time promoters, who don't necessarily have the scale and the brand to attract a lot of the demand, which is much more institutional and organized. So somewhere, if you are able to build a platform, which is a very popular idea anyway, think about Uber, Meta, a lot of platform ideas globally. If you could build a very capital efficient asset light platform where you could, rather than leasing a floor, which at that time was very common, you change the rules of the game by taking an entire building. And by transforming that building with a lot of aspirational amenities into a very superior workplace, you could start to usher in this entire era where you could appeal to the aspirations, the daily productivity or happiness of the user. And if you are able to bundle that campus offering in a manner where you could go to the end occupier and tell them that why do you have to manage your own office? It is not your core competency. And today, in today's time, core competency is what matters. We can manage your office space as a service better than you. We can do this at a fraction of the cost that you would incur. But to top it all, we would also make your employees very happy and productive and take away all your hassles. So that idea turned out to be quite a blockbuster, and it introduced a new paradigm in the commercial office space in India. Otherwise, what explains the fact that an idea which was practically 0% in 2016 when we started has now become almost 10% of India's total RE and growing still.
Correct.
We're just getting started.
Yeah, I was just mentioning to you, I saw a few months ago you were at 12 million square feet, and I think within a span of the last 3 or 4 months, we're at 14 million square feet already and growing. And whenever I think of you and I look at the buildings and I've been inside, AI is the flavor of the season. But whenever I look at your buildings and the spaces that you've created, aesthetics and intelligence is what comes to my mind. So kudos again on that. But let's pivot a little bit to, let's say, the early days of Smartworks, Harsh. What were some of the foundational decisions you made that you believe still define the DNA of the company?
Absolutely. The evolution continues still, but some things have remained constant from our early days. And it in some ways aggregates a lot of our uncanny business skills which we've learned growing up, belonging to the entrepreneurial Marwadi clan, and at the same time combines a lot of our learnings from the global exposure that we've got and appreciating a lot of the global business models which over the last decade have become quite big. Frugality is a superpower. With a lot of conviction, we've stayed very true to that mission, that it's not necessarily a constraint, but enables us to grow faster. So anything that you see at Smartworks today, you will notice a deep layer of value, because that's how we've built the business for, I would say, all seasons, because you realize that cost structure, efficiency is your biggest entry barrier right through the cycles. So we are very obsessed about ensuring that whether it's the small expense or the large capital expenditure that you're doing, frugality and capital efficiency has been a core of our DNA. Alongside speed, because you're living in those days where even 10-minute delivery is sometimes considered to be a little longer. Speed is extremely important in our context, and for us, delivering completely fitted out office experience in 60 to 90 days is essential to the promise that we've built the brand on. And therefore, a decision which was a 6 to 9 month decision, shrinking that to a 60-day time period, would be the second foundational DNA that I would like to specifically call out. And then finally, scale. In India, businesses which have thrived over the last few decades have all had this common thread, and this thread will become even stronger in times to come, that scale begets scale. And as the business crosses a certain critical threshold, scale draws a lot of advantages, both in terms of building the brand, creating a moat, also ensuring that the business enhances its profitability because a lot of the operating leverage and other things come in. So when you mentioned that the 12 million has become 14, I was only reminded that only about 3 to 4 years back, we were practically at about 4 to 5 million. So it's been a rapid transformation from what was not a very small base to becoming what is now one of the largest platforms in Asia, while being undisputably the largest in the country. So it's been quite a humbling journey, and I would give a lot of credit to the foundational DNA of speed, scale, and value, which runs very deep into the fabric of Smartworks.
Absolutely. FS square, frugality, speed, scale. if we were to define it like that. Super. If you had a time machine, Harsh, to go back to day one, is there anything you would have done differently?
A lot of learnings, I would say, over the last few years. However, you don't live with that feeling of regret because eventually whatever had to happen has happened and you make it right if it wasn't right. Somewhere taking risk even earlier and dreaming bigger sooner perhaps would be, if I had to go back, given that you've given me the liberty, would be perhaps something that I'd look at. First 2 years of Smartworks was about building momentum, finding the right product market fit, and convincing the market about the fact that this new category which we are pioneering and inventing is where a lot of the action should start moving. In some ways, you were communicating that, look, I'm not here to fundamentally change the market. We are just offering a better product so that the way it's consumed is different. We should have perhaps relied a lot more on our conviction and gone even more aggressive and pressed the accelerator button during that time. But as they say, better late than never. And we've, traversed the last few years scaling up and growing fast.
And that hindsight is the perfect science. So, I think many of the entrepreneurs feel that once they've made it, and good to hear that. But at the same time, I think you had already touched upon this. COVID was definitely a scary phase, and where you sort of locked yourself into leases, and we didn't know what to do with the counterparties or how some of them were going to behave and what. Because there was phase 1 of COVID, there was phase 2 of COVID. It didn't go away for almost a year and a half, 2 years. And it ended up redefining how people work. And the demand for workspace actually shrank at some point of time because there was hybrid, there was work from home. So I think caution was also required. You want to expand on that a little bit? How did you sort of traverse through that whole phase and any learnings from that phase?
Look, before I specifically talk about our experience during COVID, it's important to actually go back to what happened right before COVID.
Sure.
Because that's where the story really started. The first 2 years, very exciting, figuring out what's the right product market fit, making the right pivot to finally creating this new category of managed office platform in 2018. Up until this period, we were very lucky. We got support from the family and we didn't raise any external capital because the clarity in our mind was we don't want to raise anything till we are very certain about the product market fit. And let's stay very true to our mission that you have to build a business of scale. But let's not forget the fundamental truth, which is unit economics, which should be both profitable and, most importantly, cash flow accretive. So somewhere that DNA stayed within us throughout. And as we raised our first institutional round from Government of Singapore-backed Keppel, this was our Series A in 2019. We had scaled up to about 1 million square foot. Of course, we've raised our first round. There is a little bit of shopping that needs to be done to expand, scale up. So we added another 1 million square foot. And suddenly, the world crashes. Because in 6 months, after our successful closure of the round, COVID hits us. So we are all staring at each other and figuring out what just happened. During this period, our existing portfolio, which had large enterprises, continued to thrive. Work from home was enabled from the campus that we'd built. And it gave a lot of resilience to our business model that what we've built continues to grow. Obviously, whatever new we've acquired might take a little longer to ramp up because the market's a little uncertain, decision-making is taking a little longer. However, the fact that our initial pivot was successful gave us a lot of conviction that here is a time where the world has become extremely fearful. Somewhere the animal spirits in us took over that now a lot of large corporates, enterprises will reset after COVID and demand a lot of flexibility, want a lot of distributed workforce, and perhaps this might become the new world order. And it did. It was the biggest vaccine booster, I would say, to the sector that COVID enabled us to scale up. And during this period, because our business principles remained solid, we went on an expansion binge. And I would, in fact, look back with a lot of, gratitude that COVID gave us a lot of humbling lessons, but it also changed the market more towards the model that we had initially pioneered. And that continued to scale up and grow. However, big test of resilience in metal, the first 6 to 9 months, I can still look back. But the world's back, and globally, as you rightly pointed out, work from home, hybrid did challenge the model. Co-working as a model got tested a lot. But in India, it gained a new amount of permanency.
Correct. Now that you put it like that, I'm just thinking, and you're so right. Actually, the corporates would have probably stopped buying offices of their own, wanted to go more leasing, because that reduces their risks and that opens up an opportunity for you.
No, absolutely. And the paradigm changed from why lease when the future can be managed. So the entire evolution from lease to manage, where large enterprises, Forbes 2000 companies openly sort of spoke about the fact that now we are actively looking at moving a large part of our portfolio to flexible workspaces. So which is where a massive opportunity for us got created.
I understand. And every time when somebody comes in and disrupts, which is something you guys did for sure, there are always some amount of hurdles, some roadblocks, some resistance. Is there anything which particularly stands out, whether it was landlord behaviors, whether it was early client demands, anything you want to sort of call out?
Look, when we went back to the whiteboard to make the pivot from co-working to a managed office platform concept, we believed that we are not catering to a co-working or a flexible workspace market. We are catering to the entire office market. So when you think about, the paradigm of the opportunity in those lens. So remember again, like when Uber started the business, they perhaps looked at the taxi, and that's where you would have likely said that Uber is going to make a penetration. But the way they visualized the opportunity was that the entire mobility or the transportation market is an opportunity for us. Somewhere in our mind also, we were thinking that if we limit ourselves to a smaller opportunity, then perhaps the idea will prosper, but it will perhaps be suboptimal, and we will not realize the ambitions that we have aspired for. So somewhere these initial conversations with the entire community, right? So if you think about the supply side, the demand side, and the entire broker community, we were quite, in our initial days, frowned upon, right? That you must be crazy when the entire world is focused on leasing floors. Why would you lease an entire building? And there were a lot of landlords, while on the non-institutional side, but who are you? Why should I lease my entire building to you? What's going on? So just those initial conversations to convince them that how we will add more value to your building, how we will ensure that it gets transformed, we'll get great clients. And similarly, the large enterprises as well wouldn't have trusted as much in a startup like ours. But those early conversations with landlords, enterprises, and how you convince them ensured that we were able to get the initial MVP going well. And then since then, it's obviously been no looking back.
Definitely, there's been no looking back. And that just takes me to another question that there's a lot of utility, there's a lot of design, there's a lot of aesthetics, there's a lot of tech which has already gone into the managed workspaces that you've created for your clients out there. What next?
We believe we still haven't scratched the entire surface yet. So while you mentioned about aesthetics, productivity, the fundamental learning that we've had in India is that India demands fully functional offices which are priced at value. And India sometimes does not appreciate having a lot of fancy elements which take away the day-to-day functionality and the utility per se. So somewhere deep down, we are only at about 14 million square foot in a market which continues to grow. So we see a sea of opportunity in just continuing to replicate, doing the boring stuff, keep replicating, keep doing. Because at the end of the day, India is 1 billion square foot. And we are not even 1% of that. So you can only imagine that you would start to think about what's next when you've actually conquered the present. And we still feel the present has so much opportunity that here is a company which has been built in India with global quality and the type of clientele that we serve. This could have a potential to even go global. And why can't you build a world-leading organization in India which has feet to go conquer, the global territory? So perhaps as we continue to scale up in India, the aspiration would be to continue to grow the platform and add more services within India and eventually take this journey beyond just Singapore. which is where we are right now.
I was just going to check your global footprint restricts yourself to Singapore right now.
Currently.
And for any particular reason or?
India is buzzing with a lot of opportunities at this point. There's no reason for us to be distracted in any ways because we haven't even conquered India yet. History is the best teacher with worst students. We've seen enough examples, of companies in India who have tried to go around the globe to only come back to India. And perhaps we, at least at this point of time, believe that India continues to present a phenomenal opportunity. And therefore, let's continue deepening our leadership in India, adding more services, increasing wallet share with our current customers, and perhaps traversing the global territory later. Singapore was important because it gets us closer to our customer. Today, a lot of the APAC, RE heads, facility heads, decision makers sit in Singapore. And we always required a presence there, and somewhere seeing is believing, right? So just having a presence there ensures that we are able to get more access to them. However, the expansion in Singapore is never going to be as aggressive as it would be in India.
And what do you think is your biggest constraint right now, if any, in terms of if you were to, because speed and scale you've called out as the DNA building blocks that you guys have. So I know you're growing exponentially. I've already called that out. But is there something which could have aided this much better sitting where we are sitting right now?
We're in a golden run for the entire office market in India. And therefore, we at this point of time are not constrained by supply and demand at all. And your product has found wide acceptability. Speed and scale are the mantra through which we've scaled up until now. However, you do recognize that India changes in every 200 kilometers. So the experience that you provide in a Gurgaon versus a Delhi versus Noida or a Mumbai versus Pune has to be very different. Yet you have to ensure and tell to your clients, because you have a lot of pan-India clients, right, who essentially think about India and Smartworks as one, in the sense that we become the infrastructure partners for them across. That you have to provide that same consistent and standardized experience, which is incredibly difficult. Because while I did mention to you that we do deliver our entire product at value price, but it does not mean that our customers become less demanding. So to ensure that you are able to maintain that same quality throughout, and also ensure that execution, which has been one of our biggest strengths up until now, that engine continues to run at the same speed. While it sounds very easy on paper, however, this business is as much about execution as it's about strategy, which in the initial days was a very small component. Obviously now, as we scale up and grow, it becomes a more important part of the business.
Any leadership lesson you want to leave behind for the viewers, Harsh, by any chance? Any, again, coming back to any mistakes we would have made, which we could have corrected, standing where we stand if we were to look back?
Several leadership lessons that I keep getting inspired by through a lot of visionary leaders that I aspire to emulate. But somewhere the thread that has always remained very consistent is the only mantra to success is trying one more time.
Trying one more time.
Just keep at it. The grit and perseverance will take you through. And I've fundamentally seen this in life, that the harder you work, the luckier you get. But it's not the reverse.
Superb. And that's the perseverance which our team prevailed with to get you in our office today. So it resonates more now.
No, and perseverance is, and I have a lot of respect for perseverance, and of course, the entire journey of Smartworks has been quite humbling. Right from our early days where we had to make that early pivot, a lot of naysayers. Then once you made the pivot, you were starting to smell success, and then COVID hit you. And then suddenly the capital raise, there were a lot of breaks on that because a couple of our large global peers crashed, and suddenly the market said, let's not actually look at the sector at all, because when the sector leader crashes the way it does, why should we? And that, as they say, right, whatever happens, happens for good. That pushed us to unlock a lot of capital from within the business. And that's become a superpower in times to come, where you don't have to continue raising capital and you can continue to rely on your internal resources and have an accelerated focus on cash flow. So as I say, like whatever happens, happens for good, as our grandparents would say.
No, absolutely. Completely resonates. Harsh, you've been featured in several prestigious lists like the BW Disrupts 40 Under 40 and quite a few others. What do these recognitions mean to you personally and professionally?
Look, I'll be honest, any recognition is a reflection of the great work that we and the entire team has done. So it definitely feels gratifying and gives you a sense of fulfillment. But as this has become more frequent over the last few years, it's come with a deep sense of accountability, and you realize that it's actually not the award for you, but it's for the entire hard work of the entire fraternity which has backed you, right from your family in early days to your friends supporting and cheering on, to the amazing smart workers who've made this idea really come to fruition. So in some ways, we are only representing all the collective hard work and the blessings of all the fraternity and the good work that's happened. So with great work comes, great responsibility, and therefore, every time you get rewarded, it's a further validation of the fact that the American dream, which you had left to pursue and come back to India, what would have perhaps taken 30 years to build a career in US, you've probably done that in less than a decade in India. So that's the sort of opportunity that India gives you. So it just feels a blessing to be there at the right place at the right time and be an active contributor in the overall aspiration of India becoming a developed economy, hopefully very soon in the next couple of decades.
Yes, no, thanks to, I think, contribution of a lot of startup companies like yourselves. And I must say, you're being very humble about this whole bit. But these are really great achievements for somebody who's very young. You touched upon that subject, but I must say that you definitely are young and you're doing it well. We will, with your permission, pivot a little bit to another part of your journey. Your journey has been very inspiring for sure, which is the IPO journey, which is a dream come true for many, many companies. Most are not able to make it, and there are those few who are, and you are definitely one of them. Are there learnings that you would like to share with us? Both, take us through the journey, some of the hurdles that you faced, how we overcame them, and how did you hit the sweet spot eventually?
Look, I'll share all of these learnings and journey with a pinch of salt because I'm sitting in front of an IPO expert himself who would probably know, why didn't you tell me about these learnings and journey before? I would have probably helped you and navigate. So, jokes apart, IPO has been quite a humbling experience. Going public comes with a lot of accountability and responsibility. And for any company, it is one milestone that takes several years or perhaps even several decades to eventually get to. And once that milestone is conquered, then sky's the limit. You've now got access to a lot of resources to scale up your business. But at the same time, the public is watching and there's an expectation of high level of growth and transparency throughout this journey. So for Smartworks, the IPO journey happened in less than a decade. And this includes the 2 years of our pivot, 2.5 years of COVID. And through this process, we've been very obsessed about elevating our entire governance and transparency standards. And that's happened a lot courtesy having a great set of investors that we've had in our early days. So suffice to say that yes, Smartworks is a Series A to an IPO story, but the entire journey from Series A to IPO, I wouldn't necessarily say that we'd probably checked the box on the IPO checklist on the first diagnostic that we'd done about 6 months prior to us deciding that it's actually the right time for us to go tap the public markets. But you also realize that if not now, then when? Because sometimes the public market gives you a very small window. And it's a lot about ensuring that your readiness foundation is there. You continue to accelerate, become very hands-on in the entire process. And then finally, also discuss and have an open conversation with your team that if we continue thinking that I want to chase perfection, then you will always procrastinate to tomorrow. If we had to change the narrative and make it ASAP, what would it take for you to do it? It does not necessarily mean you have to take shortcuts, but you have to have that resolve in your mind that we will make it happen no matter what. And that is where I would say what would have taken us about a couple of years, which is what most of the experts had told us. We were able to crunch this to about 6 months. What public market also taught you was the fact that public market likes simplicity a lot. So especially when you're private, you tend to have a lot more patience and you tend to have a lot more time at your disposal. But when you have those 45-minute roadshow, talking about your story in 15 minutes of who you are, where you started, what made you pivot to where you are now, and where do you want to get to. Sometimes even rehearsing that entire story made us reflect that I didn't think about our story in the way an investor is thinking about it or how the public is thinking. So that learning by itself is also quite important. And then finally, we're also in that space where a lot of our respectable peers have also gone public. So therefore, having a very sharp communication around how are you different and where will this differentiation eventually lead you to becomes extremely important. So the entire storytelling and the process, both of which are extremely important, and you can't time it, but you definitely can't mistime it. So that's something that we've also learned through the journey. However, having said that, you still believe that in the larger scheme of things, IPO is only a comma in the journey of Smartworks. It is not a full stop. So the story is only getting started and it's a milestone, which is important, but this is only a starting milestone.
So Harsh, as you mentioned, it's a comma and not a full stop, the successful IPO. If I could actually request you to indulge us in your, and give us some insights on the whole GCC space as it's shaping up. It's huge for the big fours, the consulting world. We are looking at them very, very closely to look for opportunities for ourselves. How do you see that space evolving and what does that present to you as an opportunity?
We are very excited about global capability centers. The evolution of GCCs in India has been very remarkable in the last few years. And undisputably, one could argue that India has now become the GCC capital of the world. And while the macro is in front of all of us, that India shines when it comes to rental arbitrage, you could still get a dollar rental a foot, which would compare to, at least a 5 to 10x bump, which you would get in a developed country, or perhaps even more in US. Similarly, your talent arbitrage in terms of just the cost is massive. So if you combine both of these and then suddenly have this talent to be extremely productive and get the entire aspect of speed as well, that today a large company globally can set up an office very quickly, and that's where players like Smartworks have got a tremendous opportunity that you're able to deliver offices in 60 to 90 days, living to that theme of speed. And reminds me again of the transformational SEZ policy, right, ushered in during the then NDA government in early 2000s, which led to a massive export boom and had a massive multiplier effect on the economy. We are perhaps at that same point now, where this could be the SEZ moment or even more than that, because now you're dealing with a large workplace in India, very young. You are also dealing with a lot of global uncertainty. And the more uncertainty, the more global capability centers tend to continue coming in an India context. So we believe that GCCs will be a very important future for the Indian economy. It's going to have a massive multiplier effect in terms of employment generation and real estate, as well as exporting to the world is going to in some way start again in a big way with the services space, with GCCs coming, and makes us very happy that GCCs will be one big alpha over the next few years, which will continue driving a lot of incremental business for Smartworks. And suffice to say, the numbers keep doubling every year, and you will not be surprised that by 2030, this number could be almost greater than 3,000 GCCs. And when you talk about that, it's a moment to celebrate in India that all the large corporations in the world don't have their back offices in India. They have their mid and their front-end offices in India. And India in some ways is powering the next evolution of their growth. And today you have this great talent which is looking into artificial intelligence, R&D, you name it. Hyderabad is great in pharma and healthcare. It's a gold rush.
No, absolutely. We are front and center.
Or rather, let me put it this way, it's the Goldilocks moment for our industry.
No, definitely the Goldilocks moment. And we are definitely front and center. This is no longer the back office or the BPOs, not to take anything away from them. I mean, they ushered in and brought in a lot of visibility for India actually at the world stage at the right time. And what we are seeing today is actually a culmination of what was sown at that point of time. We should cherish both actually, but couldn't disagree more with you. And honestly, I'm quite tempted to remain more in touch with you because I think you guys would probably know which GCCs are coming to India much before us. And we can probably tap and collaborate with you to see how we tap them together.
Likewise, goes likewise. Whenever you have info, let us know. We like GCC and the space.
No, absolutely. I also picked up this news that you have picked up the largest managed office space globally anywhere in the world in Bombay very, very recently. You want to take us through that journey and what are you seeing next in that space?
Look, it's been a very humbling journey for us over the last few years. And what gives us a lot of satisfaction is that we've now created a record of beating our records every year. And here is an Indian company operating as a leader in a market segment which has become the largest in the world. So India's flex space is by far the largest in the world, and you'll not be surprised that any idea which saves time and money, India does tend to always demonstrate that 2G can become 4G very quickly. And that is exactly what has happened with Flex, that it's done well globally, but nowhere has it done as well as India. So that velocity has benefited leaders such as ours. And today, happy to share that 4 out of the 5 largest campuses in the world are with Smartworks in cities of Hyderabad, Bangalore, and Pune. And we feel extremely excited that this journey of ours, which is less than a decade, has given us so many milestones that the next decade will be perhaps not about the world's largest, but perhaps making a impact at even a larger global scale and not limiting ourselves to India alone.
Yeah. No, and I dread to ask you that question as to what next for Smartworks, because the exuberance that you're showing, the foresight that you're bringing to this whole discussion already clearly lays out the global ambitions that you have. But is there something you would want to call out specifically for Smart Work and Smart Workers that you want to lay out?
Look, we are sitting in an opportunity of a lifetime. And to give you some perspective, India in the last 75 years or so of our independence has created about 1 billion square foot of office space, which is, by the way, lesser than New York, and maybe you can add half London. That's it.
Seriously.
And this continues to remain concentrated in largely tier 1 cities. And all of us know that a lot of our friends from tier 2, tier 3, and just the general consensus is that phenomenal talent available everywhere. And you just don't have enough infrastructure to convert the talent into a great opportunity. So in the next 10 to 15 years, we are talking about adding another billion square foot of office space in India. And there are several reports which talk about that. 1 billion doubling in the next 10 to 15 years. If that doesn't boggle our mind, then nothing can. And honestly, for Smartworks and all the smart workers you're hearing, this 1 billion is going to create a massive new opportunity for us to continue double downing. So yes, we should continue being very disciplined and boring in what we are doing, continue going deeper in penetrating the tier 1 cities. But let's not forget there's a phenomenal opportunity in front of us with tier 2 and tier 3. So while a lot of new office supply will get created, and that's going to create opportunity for players such as us, but on the demand side, there are going to be so many drivers such as GCC, and perhaps today we are at that stage where we are serving over 800 large clients, which includes a lot of Fortune 500 companies, a lot of MNCs. We also serve a lot of large Indian unicorns who have listed, and the final citadel is getting a lot of large Indian conglomerates to come and adopt, where you're going essentially with a lot of passion and quantitative data that why do you even need your own office?
Correct.
Tatas, Birlas, ITCs, like there are, and we serve a lot of them, that why do you even need your space when someone like us can do this better, can save you money and keep your employees very happy. So once you break that riddle, then practically the entire initial assertion that I was making, that office market is the entire addressable market for you, will actually come completely true.
I am sure it will. And the more you keep touching upon the humility factor, I am tempted to call out your Bikaneri roots to the journey to Bangalore and maybe next to Boston. I must thank you for your candor and forthrightness for this interaction. I'm sure me, the team and the viewers would gain huge amount of insights from this interaction, Harsh. Thank you again for making time for us and look forward to staying connected
Thank you
with
so much. Hope you found this useful, and thank you again for having me here.
Definitely.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
This brings us to the end of yet another insightful episode of Startup Speakeasy 2.0. I'm sure we would have all gained a lot of insights from the session. Until next time, stay tuned, stay curious.